Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How much did you see from what I
I got
said?
down. We got down to when we were doing the loops.
Okay, so I actually finished the program and I ran it, and then I noticed that you're not here.
Yeah, I tried to group chat you, and then it said you left. So then
I,
I thought maybe you knew it, so I waited a minute, and then I emailed you.
yeah, unfortunately, I cannot see the group chat when my developer environment is open. So,
Okay.
all right, so I will just be periodically looking at, so probably some deal with the internet connection because of the weather or something. But
Okay.
so let me go back to that state. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, let me also do the recording by some other means. Okay, so to this is actually the entire program. I'm not sure which part you already seen, you didn't see, but let me just work through this again. So that is our array of 88 characters, and this is one of the forms of the loop that we do. Originally, I had number 88 hard-coded in this position, and then I changed it to array.length because we know it is 88. And basically, we do have two integer variables. One of them is the counter, which is internal variable of the loop, and another one is value a that will be incremented on every iteration of the loop. We need this because they will have different rate of increment. Variable a will be incremented on every iteration of the loop, but variable counter will be incremented only those times when a is prime. We actually can move initialization and declaration of a inside the loop, and in this case, the declaration would appear as a equal to 2, and we wouldn't need this line. Right, so a equal to 2, counter 0. And now on every iteration of the loop with some value of a, we call to function or method is prime and pass the value of a. If it returns true, then we execute these two statements. And in these two statements, we store value array into value of a into array at the position pointed by the counter. We know that the counter originally was set to 0, so the first prime number will go to the first position in the array. Second prime number will go to the second position in the array. And once the number is stored, we increment the position and we go for another iteration of the loop. So the loop will break after seeing 88 prime numbers, and number a in this case could be something real big, something probably several hundreds, I presume. So the function is prime. In this case, you should know, I believe you do know how to compose it, but the straightforward implementation of function is prime is actually to organize a loop and try to divide the given number a by the loop variable and see if it is if variable I evenly divides number a. If it can divide number a, it means that the number a wasn't prime, so we set a special flag to false that was initially set to true, and we break from the loop because we don't need to do any other iterations. If at least one divider is found, we satisfied with the fact that number a is not prime. That is indicated by the false value. So we break from the loop and we simply return that logical variable flag. if we have never entered into this conditional block, meaning that the flag variable remains true at the end of the loop, then we simply return true, and that will be indication of the real true number a that has been passed to the method isPrime. So isPrime method returns us either true or false depending on the nature of value of a, depending on its primarity, and we simply store it into array. And if we want to run this, these are the 88 prime numbers. You can ignore the first error message that something wrong with my development environment, but 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and the last one in this sequence will be number 457, which is obviously the 88th prime number. Any questions? You still here?
No, I don't have any questions. When I compiled mine, I think I did 1 through 88. I didn't do the first 88. Well,
yeah, that's actually the trick, because we really need two numbers. We don't know ahead of time what will be the largest number, the 88th prime number. So if you do the loop by 88, obviously the first 88 integer numbers will not contain 88 prime numbers, because not every integer number is prime. So we need to loop through a larger set of integer numbers. And since we don't know ahead of time what will be, we do the termination condition of the loop to satisfy the fact that we have counted 88 numbers.
Okay. I understand. And then I had a question about assignment 7.
Okay, let me open it and we can talk about it.
Okay.
You want to get in there, don't you?
And yes, I can take a little bit from the chicken.
Okay, what about it?
Okay. I guess I kind of didn't really understand kind of like what you were asking us to do. Like when I read it said that we were later on like going to extend the program and stuff like that. So
let me just show you try to show you the big picture.
Okay.
So there are 3 assignments, and they pretty much the other 2 continue the idea of IT asset. So in the first assignment, we just create a general class asset that is not a server, is not a router, just general placeholder for any kind of IT asset. Your next assignment will be number 8, will be to introduce special kinds of assets. For example, the attributes that we want to store for a server will be different than attributes that we want to store for the switch, because the server, for example, can be considered from the perspective as having some operating system. Server also can be a virtual server, or server may have a certain number of network interfaces. But a switch even though some switches do have operating system, but usually they are not considered from the perspective of operating system, but they are considered from the standpoint of a level of switch. So there exists level 2, level 3, level 4. So those levels are not applicable for a server. And for example, if we're talking about power supply unit, for power supply unit, pretty much the only important thing is how powerful is this power supply. Obviously, power supply doesn't have operating system, doesn't have number of network card adapters, etc., etc. So all these assets that we are talking about, they do have something in common and something unique. So each one has something unique. So your next assignment, number 8, will be to introduce something called a subclass or derived class for each of these sub-assets, if I can say so. And those subclasses will show specific attributes that are only applicable to the specific asset type. So you will have a class called router, you will have a class called server, you will have a class called switch. And in this assignment, you will need to practice with the process of creating one class on the base of another. So your base class will always be a class asset with these attributes. And these attributes seem to be universal for any given asset because a switch, a router, power supply, a server, they all have the name, they all have the serial number, they all have the vendor and some other attributes. But each of them has its own unique attributes. So that will be your next assignment. And the last assignment will be a comprehensive task to introduce a collection of different assets. So for example, here in assignment 7, I'm asking you to create an array of assets. But to create this array, you as the programmer will simply hard code those few objects. You will say, okay, in my driver program, I want to create one server, I want to create 2 switches, and I want to create one power supply. So every time you will run your program, result will be the same. In contrast to this practice, assignment 9 will have a user interface. So your user will be displayed with a menu asking, would you like to create another asset, or would you like to remove an asset, or would you like to list available assets? And the user will be able to choose one of these actions. For example, a user wants to create another asset. So then your program will ask, what kind of asset would you like to create? Will it be a router, or will it be a switch? Will it be a server, or anything else? A user will need to answer to this question. And depending on the answer of the user, for example, user wants to create a router, the program needs to ask specific questions that are only related to the router. It will not ask questions about power supply, but it will ask questions about router. Tell me more about the router. Tell me what kind of, I don't know, what kind of interfaces does it have? How many gigabit interfaces does it have? Etc., etc. Specific questions for the router. And then at the end of this questionnaire, an object of class router will be created and will be plugged into a collection of assets. And because of the principle of polymorphism, this collection can be considered as having only objects of class asset. You probably didn't touch these topics in these theoretical topics yet, but since we are talking about different classes that are all derived from asset, we can combine all of them into the same array. Doesn't matter that they all have different classes. Usually what we know about array is that array can store only a collection of items of the same kind. So in our case, all these classes, they introduce different kinds, but those different kinds are actually derived from the same class. That's why we can store all these objects in the same array. And you will simply practice maintaining user interface, interactive user interface that is a menu-driven system. You will learn how to create objects on fly and how to store them into an array, etc., etc. That will be your assignment. Still here?
Yes. I found somebody here. Actually, I was at work and we just kind of started talking, and he told me that he actually tutors in this area. So he's supposed to start helping me today. So hopefully I'll be able to start understanding better.
All right, that's good. But I just want to warn you, and I believe I already sent an email. If she or he is a tutor, don't make him to solve the problem. Let him or her explain the internals of, for example, what router is and in what way router is different from the switch, or how to create a base class. You probably can consider another problem, say, talking about different cars, and a car could be a Toyota car or I don't know, BMW car, and each of these cars may have different properties. So it's similar to this, where a car class will be very general class, but then derived classes will contain each of the derived class will contain its own attributes. So when you will learn this idea of polymorphism and inheritance, you should be able to apply this knowledge to our problem.
Okay. Yes, that's my biggest problem is just when I'm here by myself and I'm trying to do it, and if I like getting an error and I check the basics that I know, I don't know how to fix the error. If it's not like a semicolon or like a punctuation error or something like that. If it's something deeper, I'm not 100% sure. So I just need someone to kind of like stand over my shoulder and say, well, your problem comes.
That is perfectly okay for tutor to help you with this,
Yeah.
to help to cope with syntax problem or maybe few logical problems. And I will be completely okay as long as the tutor doesn't actually solve the homework problems for students. So
Okay.
you can ask these questions to tutor, or you probably, if the tutor is not available, you can shoot me an email with the error message and with your code. I will be able to reply to you
Okay.
if I'm available at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right.